Hey everybody, I want to read a verse to you in Ezekiel chapter 38. Follow with me here. I'm in verse 15. This is speaking about what we call the Ezekiel 38 war, Russia coming down from the north. But let me read two verses and then we'll bring Doc in. And thou shalt come from thy place out of the north parts. It's Russia now. Thou and many people with thee, all of them riding upon horses, a great company and a mighty army. Verse 16, and thou shalt come up against my people of Israel as a cloud to cover the land. It shall be in the latter days, and I will bring thee against my land, and the heathen, that the heathen may know me when I shall be sanctified in thee, O Gog, before their eyes. We'll stop right there. And we're going to talk about Ezekiel 38, but we're going to give some detail here. And I'm going to ask Doc an important question as soon as I bring him on, and we're going to get him going on this because I've got questions. I want to know. This is what I'm going to ask. Don't tell him, but I don't want him to hear. But this is what I'm going to ask Doc. He's sitting right there. But I'm going to ask Doc, what's the trigger that starts this? What is it that makes Russia decide to leave and come down to the mountains of the north, the Golan Heights, and take Israel, or as he thinks he's going to? We know the Bible says something different is going to happen. But what is it that triggers this? That's what I've been going through my mind the last few days. And we're going to ask that to Doc sitting right here. And so you get ready, get your Bible, get you a glass of water, whatever you need. We'll be back in 30 seconds. Hey, welcome everybody to the program. We're going to talk about Ezekiel 38. What triggers this war? Doc's got some slides for us. He's got a lot of information. And I've studied this. I've got a lot of notes in my Bible, stuff highlighted. I really think Doc has got a better handle on some of this stuff than I do. And but don't get a big head, Doc, over that. But so let me start with that, Doc. We know about the war. We know that it very possibly happens the day of the rapture. We don't know that for sure, but we do have a scenario where that would fit. And whether that's how it works or not, we'll find out pretty soon. But my question is, because I'm looking for signs of the times here, what is it that causes the leader of Russia to finally snap to attention and say, "That's it. I'm going down there and I'm taking Israel"? Yeah. Got any thoughts on that?
Well, verse number 4 says, he said, I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaw, and I will bring thee forth, and all thine army, horses, horsemen, and clothing, all that for the battle. And so
God puts the hooks in there.
Yes.
So is it all on God, or is Russia ready and God just edges him down?
I think Russia will be ready by that time, and it may not be that far away.
What would be the goal of a country like Russia? And I know I've thrown some stuff out already, but I want to get your view on it. What would be the purpose, the goal of a Russia to come down and attack the country of the world that's the most disputed and hated?
Well, I think there's going to be, just as the word hook is plural here, hooks, I think the answer to that question is more than one thing together.
Okay.
And I don't think anybody can be absolutely dogmatic about it.
Well, I've got a few thoughts, and I'll throw them out to you, and you may have the same. Financial gain comes to mind.
Part of it, yes.
Strategic property I mean, you're looking at Russia, we talked about this off camera. That's a huge place. They're 11 time zones, did you say? We only have 4. That's a big, but a third of it, a third of it's inhabitable?
That's about right.
Because it's so cold up there. Yeah. And so they have a land problem. They have a money problem sometimes. They're not very strategic to the rest of the world.
No.
But that little place called Israel is right at the gateway between Asia and Europe, right?
That could be one of the hooks.
And the wealth that's in Israel, they tell me, I've heard for years, decades, that there's more wealth in the bottom of the Dead Sea than anywhere on the planet.
There is a lot to do that concerning minerals.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
That could be another hook.
So there's money, there's financial gain to whoever takes Israel. There's strategic place to put armies and to try to control the world. There's also the fact that we've pushed Russia up against a wall.
That could be.
And I believe, and I've
part
said
of it,
this
no
since
doubt.
the war started in Ukraine, I've said from the beginning, America has started this.
Yes. Globalist.
I mean, Kamala Harris and all them were when she was vice president.
Well, America has the military complex, and the globalist pushed it through that. Yes.
And we were, through some of the pipelines of America, like Kamala Harris and others, were throwing out that carrot that Ukraine should be part of the United
Well, she went to Germany and made that little speech, and next day or two it started because,
not the United Nations. What was it?
I don't know. She was speaking in Germany, but anyway.
Yeah, they said that they should that
NATO.
NATO. They said Ukraine should join the NATO.
Russia-
That's when Russia said, "Oh, wait a minute."
Yeah. Of course, there are a lot of facets, so that's another hook possible.
Yeah. So now, how close? Nobody knows, but doesn't it look like maybe they're pretty close to the?
Could be very close, and then it could be time for some things maybe to develop yet.
Would they attempt that during Trump's tenure, or would that be something?
I don't know. I don't think so, but there are so many ifs.
Yeah. And Trump could be assassinated at any moment.
Well, we've had
unbelievable what's going on.
We've had former FBI leaders saying, and things that we've seen. So yes.
Yeah.
Well, if she'll put that first chart up there, I think I can begin to answer
All right,
some of those questions.
let's get in this, Doc. You got some slides. You take over.
Because several years ago now, when this war began between Ukraine, my phone started ringing, my text, emails, preachers all over the country. Do you think this has anything to do with Ezekiel 38? And so there's I put together, I did some research. Already had a fairly good handle on Ezekiel 38, 39. But with a little research, I began to discover some other things that really helped me, not only with this issue, but other things in prophecy from what I gathered from it. And so in order to really understand Ezekiel 38, then you have to go outside of Daniel chapter 2 and chapter 7. Everybody, probably in our listening audience, everybody knows about the kingdoms in the dream of Nebuchadnezzar, the gold and silver and the brass and iron and feet of clay and iron. Everybody is aware, very aware of that. So most Bible students, because of the educational system we have today, are very limited in their understanding of world history. And so in order to understand Ezekiel 38 and 39, you have to go outside of Daniel's image and those kingdoms to get an understanding of this, because these are outside of those kingdoms.
Well, you're exactly right, Doc, and never really thought about it like that before. But you're right. This is an event and kingdoms that are outside of, of those kingdoms.
Outside of those kingdoms, and because the reason why Daniel chapter 2 and 7 are so important is because they go with Daniel chapter 9. They are a picture of the Gentile kingdoms that are going to have direct influence, control, and intervention over Israel. That's why they're there. This battle is people's groups that are a part of other world kingdoms besides those kingdoms. Everybody thinks that that the Persian kingdom was the greatest, biggest, largest kingdom in the world, not realizing that at the same time the Parthian kingdom north of them and the Scythian kingdom north of that were even larger. Most people don't know that.
And I remember you brought that out. First time I ever thought differently about that was when you brought it up. I've always said, in fact, some of my old writings, I say these were the 4 world kingdoms.
Yeah.
And that's not exactly
and
accurate.
they were in their reference and relationship to Israel.
Right. Yeah.
And so the statement's not incorrect in that sense. But put the next slide up, if you would. We've got about 15 slides for you to see. What you need to understand is he says in verse 2, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog. So you got to go back to the table of nations in Genesis chapter 10. And there you get the descendants of Noah through Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Mm-hmm. And you find that through Japheth, you're going to come to a son, Magog. And so Magog, in our world today, the nations that end with Stan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan,
Afghanistan,
all of the Stans are all Magog people. And by the way, so is Russia, a Magog. So when you hear of these nations that end in Stan, realize that they're going to be a part of this, because in 6th century BC, when this was written, they were the entire nation. Show the next slide. And because this is the Scythian kingdom.
So that's Russia and a whole bunch of those
and
stands
a whole
right
bunch
there.
of all of the stands. Matter of fact, even in Chinese history, Chinese said that they built the wall. Everybody talks about the Great Wall of China. In their history, they say they built the Great Wall of China to keep the Magogs out. Because the Magogs, if you know a little bit of your history, you've probably heard of the Mongols.
Yeah.
And the Kublai Khan and the Khans and all of those leaders, very bloodthirsty. But it was Kublai Khan that united all of those tribes at that time. And they didn't save anybody. They whacked anybody's head off. And so the Scythian kingdom, at the same time that this Ezekiel 38 is written, the Scythian kingdom, if you look at the chart, you see where the S is on Scythia? Mm-hmm. If you know anything about modern Ukraine, you realize that the eastern third of modern Ukraine was a part of the Scythian kingdom. So when I put this together, it seemed like the Lord impressed on me a little understanding that when God gave a prophecy to a people's group in their geography, He will fulfill that prophecy with that people group in their geography. And when this thing is settled, show the next picture. When this thing is settled with Ukraine, I'm confident, there again is a picture, and Russia has extended much farther than all of that, but I'm confident that up to the Dnieper River or in that area of what we call Ukraine, I could have showed a picture of 7 different times the expansion of present Ukraine from 1611, and amazing different times that they expanded. And Russia once occupied all of that. I'm confident they'll get it again. You can show the next slide. And so I'm confident that the groups that are going to come out of the north, the Magogs and the Persians, which is called Iran, and Libya, which I think is going to take in all the way to Morocco, all the way across the top part of Africa. You're already seeing the Sudanese and all of the uprisings there. And what you're seeing is the Islamic unification. Persians are Shiite, and The rest of all of those in Africa are Sunni. But for the cause of destroying Israel, and I don't think you find Egypt involved in this battle, or you don't find it named here, because Egyptians are not necessarily the Arabs, and they're not necessarily a part of this. So it's an outer ring of basically Islamic people. Why are they joining in with Russia? That's the big question.
Is it their hatred for Israel?
The thing is, when you do a little study, you realize that a lot of the wars that since 1948 that have come against Israel, Russia has always been a part of backing and supporting the Arab community against Israel.
Yeah.
They've never been a real friend of Israel. No matter how many times Israel has put peace out to them, it's always accepted on the surface, but really never accepted. And show the next slide. This battle, one of the things, Dan, and by the way, these are pictures out of the message that I have on this with these. I've got about 50-some animated slides in that message. But everybody gets this battle mixed up with the one we talked about the other day. Armageddon.
Yeah.
And Armageddon is down in the Jezreel Valley.
Yeah.
And this is up on the Golan Heights. You can show another picture. So the Armageddon is bringing all of the world's major people together. This one's bringing a distinct group together. Big difference. And so they're not one and the same war. You can show the next slide. To help people understand, the mountains of the north is the Golan Heights. You might not be able to see it, but you can see a little bit of a demilitarized zone and a little line on the outside of Golan Heights. That's supposed to be the UN, where the UN had a buffer zone between the Golan Heights and Syria.
Yeah.
Well, now, because of the fall of Assad, Israel has taken that over all the way up to Mount Hermon. And up at Hermon, they now have outposts up there. And if you see, that puts them at about 40 miles from Damascus.
Yeah.
And so all of this, I believe, is setting the stage. Everybody says, well, Syria's got a new leader and President Trump just met him. Oh, he's a nice guy. Hey, he's a hardcore Islamist. He's an ISIS individual. He will become anything he needs to be to get to his ultimate goal of what he wants to do.
Yeah.
And so, next slide. And so, what the Battle of Armageddon does is end Gentile rule. Gentile rule is going to continue at least 7 years beyond this point.
Yeah.
So look at the next slide. The question that everybody wants to know is why, and we've already discussed a few of the hooks, and I don't disagree with the hooks that we've talked about being a part of it. During this campaign against Ukraine, several things have happened. One of the things that has happened is somebody, and I think we probably all know who that somebody is,
The pipeline.
blew up that Nord Stream pipeline. But what a lot of people don't realize is that for almost 70 years, Russia has really been the king of the North because Russia has provided all of the natural gas for almost all of Europe. There have been times because that gas line, one of the major ones, runs right through Ukraine, they shut it off. And if you didn't pay your bill, they shut it off. They've been in control.
Yeah.
But during this war, that one pipeline got blew up. It's not the only stream they have. They have another one that runs down through Turkey, and all they done was reroute all of that through Turkey and still are bringing it in on a little limited basis. I'm convinced, you can show the next slide, I'm convinced that one of the major hooks in the jaw of the North is this. The Islamic crowd will be glad to provide the armies. But which one of all of these nations that are mentioned here has the military mindset, capability, leadership, know-how, technology to do this? Russia.
Yeah.
They don't have it. And Israel has one of the, I don't remember what level it is, 9, 10, 11, somewhere along in there, ranked the most powerful military in the world.
Yeah.
So no matter how many men you have, you need somebody that knows how to fight war. Well, Russia has, the Magogs have always been warring people.
Yeah.
And so when you do two things, Iran, which is Bible Persia, during this campaign of Russia against Ukraine, has provided them over $1 billion of drones. And so here's one of the hooks. I don't know how many hooks are going to be there, it's plural. But I think one of the major hooks are two things. One is Iran is going to say, look, and by that time, who knows, Ezekiel or Jeremiah chapter 49, I believe, is a time that's going to happen when the nuclear program in Iran is going to get bombed. And you heard just yesterday, they are refusing to stop it, no matter what our dialogue with America is. Mm-hmm. So Iran, Persia, Bible Persia, is going to say to Russia, you owe us. Second major hook is what you're seeing on the screen, is Russia is going to be offered, I believe, by all of these nations, because all of them is going to say, we've got all the oil and we have all the natural resources we need. If you help us get rid of it, you can have all of the natural gas and oil, and once again, you're the king of the north. You have control of all the natural gas and oil for Europe. I'm convinced of it.
Just get rid of Israel and we'll give you
Yes.
the wealth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because they don't need it.
Yeah.
The only people in those countries that we saw on there out of northern Africa, Iran, and all, the only people that need money are the elites. The rest of the people are basically servants.
Yeah.
And so I believe that they're going to say, look, because we don't have time to talk about the Kurish field. I don't know if you remember when we had a meeting over in Shepherdsville and I did the walkthrough time.
Yeah.
The family that came from Colorado.
Yeah.
He shared with me, he said, you know that gas field, and we talked about it, and he said, well, I was the director over putting that all together. And so what now is in Israel is some of the greatest value of natural gas as well as oil, and Israel now is through Cyprus into Greece bringing natural gas into Europe. Russia don't want to stand for that. They don't want to lose control. I'm convinced these hooks are going to be used to bring them into this battle. And once they finally settle this thing in Ukraine, and I don't know when, but it will, I don't know if Trump will get it or who, I'm convinced those 4 or 5, I believe it is, 4 districts on the eastern end of Ukraine will once again be the property of the Scythian kingdom, and this prophecy will be fulfilled.
So this war happens on Golan Heights, the mountains of Israel. Mm-hmm. It's going to be. God says He's going to end it. Now that many times, what that means is God's going to use man to do it. It doesn't have to, but
there will be an earthquake that takes place, and
but that could be man-made too.
It could, but we're seeing seismic activity. Well, you see what happened in Turkey or southern Turkey. 2 or 3 years ago, the great earthquake. We had an earthquake just last week before this area, a major earthquake just off the shore of Israel. And so, but here's the thing. He tells them in chapter 39 that he's only going to leave a 6th part of this great army alive.
And that's the army that's on the mountain.
The armies that are gathered, they're going to gather into Syria. That's where they're going to gather and stage to go.
Which is right on the border.
Right
of
on the
Israel.
battle. The thing that separates Israel from Syria is the Golan Heights, the mountains of the north.
Yeah.
And because he said in verse number 12, he said, here's the reason they're coming, to take a spoil and to take a prey. And so they're coming, as you've already pointed out, they're coming financially, those spoils and the prey. They're coming for that.
Yeah.
They want domination. Again, I think from all of the rest of Scripture, it's obvious there's going to be seen as a king of the West, the Antichrist, the king of the East, I'm convinced is going to be led by China, the king of the North, the king of the South, I believe is the Islamic Caliphate. And you're going to see as a result of this, the setting up, the solidifying of these kings.
Now, is that all the slides?
Yeah, that's all the slides for today.
We got just a little bit of time. Let's go ahead and give our scenario. We're not saying this is how it happened, but it could be. Because the Bible does say that they're going to burn the weapons. In fact, it's in chapter 39, verse 9. They're going to burn them with fire for 7 years. Now, my goodness, isn't that a light
right.
coming on?
Well, the thing is, we know this is written, they're coming on horses and chariots. Wait a minute. We don't ride horses and chariots.
Yeah.
And I've heard everybody say, oh, by that time there'll be such a nuclear fallout that the only way they can get there is on horse. No. Prophecy is always using terms that every generation or era of time would have an understanding of battle armament.
Yeah.
And so if there's chemical warfare or if there's nuclear warfare involved in any of the machinery and equipment they brought, the only way to purge that is with fire.
And the 7 years is interesting because the tribulation is 7 years, a week of years.
Yeah.
And could it be, and this is the scenario that I came up with, and you and I have talked about this, and this could be. It could be that this Ezekiel 38 happens, the Antichrist somehow, or possibly the Antichrist, ends that war. And
Well, I think he may take credit for it. I'm convinced from the text, God's the one that's going to do it because he said, so that all the heathen, all the world will know that he's God. But I think the Antichrist is going to try to, he's going to take credit.
And it ends, the Antichrist, there's chapter 6, the rapture happens, the Antichrist shows up on a white horse, again, symbolic, he's just come from a great victory, he's crowned, and there you have it, we're in the tribulation, okay? And the weapons burn for the 7 years of the tribulation. It makes perfect sense. Now, we're not saying it has to be that way, but that's a scenario that fits. Well, we're out of time. We hope you know Jesus as your Savior. If you need any help with that, contact us. Until next time, keep your eyes on them skies.